the role of a producer. And
I thought you were going to talk about my Flip Flop Records t-shirt, John, first.
Oh, yeah, sorry, let's start there. Nick's got a Flip Flop Records t-shirt. Doesn't it look nice?
To Scott Milligan. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, it was really...
Feel free, anybody else, to send me merchandise.
I was like, Secret Faces got really happy when I was wearing their t-shirt on the podcast. So if you do want to send us merch, we'll gladly wear it.
Although he sent me my own merch, not his merch. This is even better. Could really do with a couple of Session Recall ones, John. So we're talking about production, John.
Yeah, we're talking about production and your Flip Flop Record t-shirt. And also the Whips has a Vocalzone endorsement. We haven't mentioned that in a while.
We haven't mentioned that in a while, no. Even though he's kind of semi-retired from the music business, he's still got his Vocalzone endorsement. I think he's got a lifetime supply. So production.
Yes, on production. So the angle we were going to kind of go from it was, well, are there different roles of producers? Are there different types of producers that you've encountered when you've been in the studio?
So many different roles. I mean, we see it all the time. We have people come and work with us straight out of university, or we get applications, and on the application say, I'm a record producer. If they're making music, even just in their bedrooms and releasing music and putting music together themselves, then they're producing music, they're a record producer. But I think when they're kind of telling you this, they're saying that their role within our company should be a record producer because they are a record producer, when there's so much more involved in that. And I've worked with all different levels and styles and types of producer over the years. So it's really hard to say you're a record producer in a kind of working sense of the words, because so my role as a producer, we've just done the Nada Surf album, and which I'm co-producing with Ian Lawton, and so the role of the producer on that is not just making the music, doing the pre-production. Ian's been doing all the pre-production as his role as one of the producers, and the rehearsals, and then there's the organisation, because they're spread out. One lives in Texas, one is in Florida, one is in Ibiza, one is in Cambridge in England. So as a producer, you're involved in the itinerary of everybody and the logistics of getting everyone here. So that's booked by, they've got management, so the management help and all that, but the management need to know where they need to be, when they need to be there. So the role of producers is putting that together, and then helping with booking the flights, how they're going to get from the airport to the studio, when do they need to go. Everyone arrived at different times. So it was like, how can we, we can't just afford to send cars to 4 different airports or whatever and hire cars, because it's just going to eat into the budget. So it was the logistics of that. So how the session's going to run, how do you make the most of the time, the money, the budget. Also, the producer's in charge of the budget. So how much is the studio? How much are the session musicians? Are we having strings? Who's mixing it? Well, where's it being mixed? Who's mastering it? How much are the flights? How much is the cars? How much is the petrol? Food budget every day. So the producer's really doing all that. And that's something maybe that you're not really being taught while you're being taught to be a producer in music college or uni. I think it's getting better. I think part of the business, they touch on that now, and they do teach you a little bit more than that, but certainly they never used to. So there's that role of producer, a bit more in the sense of the film world, where a producer would put together the whole team, the studios, be in charge of the budgets, go and get the money from wherever they're getting the money from, and then put the team together, which is what a producer also does. It's put the right engineer for the project, the right mix engineer, mastering engineer, make sure you're going to the right studio. There's no point going to Rockfield if you're going to make a dance record and you need to use Logic and loads of plugins and that kind of record. You wouldn't go somewhere like Rockfield. So picking the right studio, also looking at what the band are like, how much their budget is, and putting the whole thing together, start to finish, and seeing it through from the point of concept of it to delivering it to the label or delivering it to the artist. There's many roles, and that takes a lot of skill and organization itself, a lot of time, but that is your role as a producer as well. And the label do that, and the management, but as we know, a lot of the bands we work with now don't have management, don't have labels. A lot of bands do it themselves, so you're involved in that. And that's kind of always, when I've worked with big producers over the years, they're heavily involved in that side of it. From someone like Roy Thomas Baker went on tour with The Darkness before the album and kind of really immersed himself in the world of the band and what they sounded like, and then all the pre-production and the writing sessions. But then there has been producers who maybe don't do any of that. They have managers themselves, and maybe their managers will take care of that, and they literally just concentrate on the music. which I've been involved when I've co-produced stuff. Then, so like with Nada Surf, Ian's taking care of all the logistics side of it and all the band side of it, and I'm taking care of all the music side of it. So my role is predominantly just the music, and Ian is the day-to-day running of it, how the sessions are going to flow, making sure everyone's aware of what they're doing all the time. But yeah, I've worked with lots of producers who don't get involved in that kind of thing, or maybe they used to but don't now, and loads who do. And then there's producers who aren't even in the room much, because they may be just overseeing the session, overseeing the music. They've put the whole thing together, and now they're confident the whole thing. There's a great engineer in the studio. There's great session musicians on there. They've got everyone to the studio. They're working on the budget in their room or office or whatever, and they're still working on the next session. They're like booking the studio for mixing or booking string players or something, and they just pop in and out the studio and oversee the whole thing, because all their kind of hard work and the pre-production part is already done. So then it's just making sure everything is running smoothly as it should. And then there's other producers who are there every minute of the day, heavily involved, doing everything along with the engineer, or maybe they're engineering themselves, like me and you would do.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of different roles. And has the role of a producer changed over the years? I guess, but the producer always kind of did all those things, but now with less labels and less management companies around, or less artists being signed to labels and management companies, then maybe the producer has to do a lot more of that organizational stuff when you're working with the band, because the bands just want to concentrate on making a record, make it the best record they can. So you're brought in as a producer because he knows us, he can organize everything, he knows our budget, and he'll make sure that record gets delivered on time and on budget and work well with that band. I mean, you're obviously more involved in the kind of lecturing, teaching world and colleges and uni. So how much time do you see devoted to that side of being a producer?
I think it's a really difficult position, because there's that element where you've got the definition of producers also changed. So you've also got like the producer in terms of like electronic music, like dance music. Yeah. So people will be coming and going, I'm a producer, and what they're doing is obviously producing beats and stuff, but they've never had any experience in the studio. And that kind of gets mixed up, I suppose, with obviously the traditional path, where there's like, and there's like the pathway from working as an assistant to engineer that might have worked from obviously like yourself from the 90s and maybe early 2000s and stuff. That's kind of going away a little bit. From like the education side of things, I think a lot of it most of the time is trying to get people up to speed on how to like the first year might be just getting them up to speed on recording. Like this is like these are microphones. This is like a way to set up drums and stuff. But like most of the time, it's just trying to get them to like get in the habit of recording and working with other people. For the final project, you might be producing one or two people, but you can normally see with like the students who kind of coming in, the ones who are in there 24/7, they're obsessed with everything and they don't want to leave. They're the ones who think, well, they probably have a shot at it. But then there's also, I think, I don't know if this is going to actually end up in the cut, but I know Ramesh quit uni after the first year, after the first term. I don't think he ever graduated. I don't know, but I remember him quitting because I was mates with him when he went to uni. And it's just because he's like, well, I've got the studio at home. I'm not really learning anything. I might as well just carry on doing what I'm doing. And like the studios in like South Wales at the time, or Glamorgan as it was, it's good, but it wasn't, like he had better stuff at home.
Yeah. And when you come into a studio and work on actual sessions, then you learn so much more. You're kind of fast tracked through the whole process, working with other professionals, working with more artists, doing it day in, day out. It's nice to have that qualification and to learn some technical aspects, but someone like Ramesh would have already been up to speed on all that. He would have known how to use everything, so switched on, just a natural at doing. So yeah, was he going to learn more in that classroom environment, or was he going to learn more working with these bands?
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure he got to shadow Greg Haver as well for a bit.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he kind of came in and he'd like,
shadowing producers like that. That's worth, weight in gold.
Yeah, I have to message Ramesh about this and just double check.
Yeah, if you can go and work with someone like Greg Haver, or even go and work with Ramesh now and shadow him, that's when you're going to learn more than you can learn in do a few weeks of that. You'll learn a year's worth of a course.
Yeah. And it's
But there's, they're trying to change it. Like speaking to Adam in Bridgend, and he's trying to write these things into the new course there, the degree course, the music business side of it, the roles of producers and things like that. So it's definitely getting better.
if we go back, say, 10 years, there's also been, I think, a transition in terms of the people who are teaching it. Some people have come in
Yeah,
and obviously had the experience of working. So I know in BIM in Brighton for a while, so Dan Swift, who worked on like the Snow Patrol records, he
yeah,
was working as a producer, and then he went obviously did some lecturing with Bruce in BIM,
yeah.
and then went back to being full-time producer. And so it's like you get like people coming in, and obviously the other thing you're trying to do is when we're in the education side of thing is you're trying to bring in people to talks and stuff and say, well, like this is what it's like,
Yeah.
rather than I think maybe go back 10 years or maybe a bit more
It
where
wasn't like it. We used to get people, and they just didn't know. And they'd done 3 years at uni. They didn't know anything, And I think I might have talked this up before when we had Alex at Leeders Farm and a friend of his, Paul, who were on a course in Cambridge. And they just came to the studio initially just for work experience. And they were saying they hadn't been taught any of these things. They had no idea that this was actually how you made a record. And I'm thinking, this is a degree course these guys are doing. And they're really switched on. And they were like, we're telling our lecturer how you make records. We're going back and telling him, and he's asking us, what do they do? And because their lecturer had gone to uni, done the course,
and start
then
teaching.
done his teaching degree, and now he's teaching these kids how to make records.
Yeah.
Yet he'd never been in a studio. He'd never been a producer and engineer, never made a record, never been in a studio. And he was teaching them. And I thought that was really odd. And we were seeing it time and time
Yeah.
again. People coming to us for a month and saying, I've learned more in my month than I have in 3 years on my uni course. But when the industry changed and there wasn't as much work and the money wasn't around for all the producers and engineers, you've got all these great producers and engineers around, and they've made their way into the teaching world, which is a great thing for the youngsters coming through, a great thing for the unis and the colleges, because now most of them are made up with professionals who've been there, done it, made records, ex-musicians, ex-producers, ex-engineers, ex-record company people who know the industry, know what you need to do, know what's involved. So it's massively improved now, but you still can't beat being there on the ground in the studio working with great producers. And
So when you started, like we mentioned a bit about like the hands-off approach, and then I remember recently, have you seen like the Rick Rubin clips, where like the interviews and stuff? Where obviously, like Rick Rubin's going like, "Oh, do you know how to use your desk?" Like, nope, no idea. Don't do anything.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And obviously, his like approach is obviously he's what I suppose you call it, music fan, and he's
Yeah.
got a very good gut feeling about
Yeah.
music, and obviously he has people to kind of do it.
Yeah, I mean, he's just amazing at putting together the right package for that artist. The right people involved working on it, the right studios, the right, like you say, a music fan loving the music. Yeah, and there's our producers who come in who aren't technical, who don't do anything on the desks, don't do anything on the Pro Tools, don't know how to do any of that stuff. But musically, they're just switched on and they've just put together the whole thing and they're in charge of the whole thing. Yeah, but do you need to? Not necessarily. If you're, I mean, we do because that's a necessity because we can't afford an engineer, so we do the kind of whole thing. So we've had to learn to do that, and then no one taught me how to use Pro Tools. I had to use it because there was no money to get a programmer.
Yeah.
So had to use it. But does someone like that need to know those things? No. If you make great records with a great team, then you don't need to. That's his role. That's what he does. He puts together the people. I mean, I told the story before where he didn't even come to the session I engineered for Rick Rubin. Just called me from his house every day, asked if everything was going well. And he was like, at the end of the day, don't need to be there. You're in Rockfield, great studio. You've got Nigel Kennedy on the strings, great violin player. You're a great engineer to record it. Why do I need to be there? I've put you lot together. Just do your thing. So,
I was wondering, have we talked about that on the podcast?
I'm not sure. Maybe you have now. Yeah, it was just great. Just got to speak to him once a day. That was it.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, it was on a Donovan record. Donovan never came either. Donovan was like, "Why do I need to go? It's Nigel Kennedy in Rockfield with Nick Bryan. That's it. Everything's fine. Why do we need
the
to?
Only,
why do
the
we
only
need to be
thing
there?"
is like when you just get left to do it, you kind of start second guessing yourself sometimes. It's like, well, do they? Is this what they want? Do you like? How do you? I mean, this. How do you send the files over to them to listen to? Was it playing it down the phone? Was it?
Well, we were on tape.
Yeah,
we were on tape. So no, because Rick's role was right. We need strings on this record. Who's going to kind of do the right job on this? And at the time, Nigel Kennedy's like one of the most famous kind of violinists in the world.
Yeah,
and still is. Nigel worked out of Rockfield a lot. He did a lot of stuff there. Who's a good engineer who's used to recording that kind of stuff at Rockfield with like, and that was me. So then you go, no, I mean, he brought in. I just wanted to meet him. I just thought he was coming. We all thought he was coming. But then I didn't have to, recorded lots of violins. Rockfield got great mics, going through great pre's.
Yeah.
Nigel will tell me if his violin doesn't sound right to him. So he'll say, and Nigel will know the Rockfield mics, and we talked about it, and he's like, yeah, well, we usually use this and we usually use that. So, and we gave them like 4 choices or something.
Yeah.
But we were on tape, so we couldn't just upload files for them to check.
Well, even until maybe a couple of years ago, you couldn't upload files in Rockfield very quickly.
No, not unless you went down to Costa Coffee, used that and borrowed their Wi-Fi. But then I was like, I've just got to record this and make sure all the mics are working, and no noise, and it's captured nicely, and make Nigel comfortable. That's it. Keep Nigel aware when we're recording, what we're doing.
Yeah.
Make sure it's all recorded nicely. Make sure it's all labelled nicely on the track sheets, on the tape boxes. And at the end of the day, do I need to tell Nigel Kennedy what to play, or if it was any good? No. Nigel Kennedy knows if he played well and if the parts are good. So Nigel scored all the parts and then played them like the genius he is. And then we sent the tapes back. We just got a note to say thanks very much, everything's great. And that was that. Pretty sure the credit says on the album that strings produced and arranged by Rick Rubin, even though the strings were kind of produced and arranged by Nigel Kennedy and recorded by me. But I think I got a recorded credit, but I'm kind of producing it as well.
Yeah.
So, but who cares? It was a chance to get, work on a Donovan record and do something for Rick. Yeah, as I say, some who just aren't technical and don't get involved in any side. They don't want to get involved in the technical side of it.
There's also, there's an element as well. There's like, I remember Gil Norton came up through tape. And then obviously you got to producing like the Pixies and stuff, and is very, very good and professional on tape, and knows what he likes, and is a very, very good, he's very good with relationships. He's very good at obviously directing bands. And as we talked about when he came to Leeders Vale, we did like demos and stuff with the band for the first day, and spends a lot of time in pre-production. But he always has an engineer now, I think, working for him on for Pro Tools side, because obviously learning that whole aspect, that's going to take away from his focus and time from the music, and the producing. So it's just like, well, it'd be easier. You can still make great records without having to use a computer, as long as you've got someone there to do it.
Yeah, but when it was all coming in, he was making big records. So there was budgets for engineers, and there was budgets for always getting engineering. Whereas I was in a position where all of a sudden the record companies were saying, right, the budget on this, we haven't got budget for a producer, engineer, and a programmer. We've got a budget for one person to do all 3. So, and of course, I knew I had to learn it because I was an engineer as well as a producer. I was engineering for Rockfield and producing for Rockfield and for myself as well. And I wanted to learn. And Owen, who I was working with when we first used it, he didn't know how to use it. He didn't have any training. We were just sat there and we got to learn this. We need to learn this now and fast because we're going to be using this from now on. Because for Owen, having virtually unlimited tracks was like a godsend. And not being able to record over anything at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're absolutely off your head was another godsend. So we were like, we better learn this quick. And then, luckily I was built the studio for Gwigsy from Oasis. And he was like, what are we going to put in it? I was like, we've got to put Pro Tools in it.
These are the 888 ones, the 888s.
Actually, So the 888s and then eventually went to the 192s, But the 888s. And so he put a Pro Tools rig in. We got that. Technical Earth, Fredo there, got us sorted up. With all that stuff, put that in his studio that I put together with him. And it was great because I could sit in that studio then all day, all night when we weren't recording stuff because the bands were coming in and there was no tape in that studio. It was just Pro Tools. So I got kind of really proficient on it pretty quick. And that was a massive help having that rig to be able to use every day. I mean, before that, people used to hire them in from FX Rentals and it was a massive cost,
In terms of, with Owen, and obviously, we haven't really talked about the Oasis session. I know we're going to talk about having an Oasis episode or whatever, but Owen and Noel's relationship. Was Owen acting as producer? Was Noel co-producing? Because I know obviously Noel had a vision for the records.
Yeah, so they're co-producing together because, a lot of the time Noel's not there when, say, some of the others are doing their parts or whatever, but they have massive conversations about how the record should sound and how it should go, but also just going with the flow, knowing that Owen's going to get the best out of everybody and be creative, and Noel knows what he wants and obviously writes amazing songs and is brilliant in the studio. and Noel had mentors and would listen to other people that he liked. And I know he took a lot from Weller and stuff about how to make records. And he'd been around the business, and he just knew how to make records. But Owen was, doing his thing, his kind of way of recording, his style of recording, which is why he was brought in. So yeah, that really, worked well as a co-production thing. And of course, they had really good management and the label, and Owen had management, so there was plenty of people to do all the organizing. And it was like to tell everyone, you just need to turn up there, because I don't think you could leave that entirely to Owen. Really, we was busy making records, staying up all night. Yeah, but I mean, brilliant. I mean, he's a great, great producer, and he's and a great engineer as well, because he's got such the ideas in his head. So he rather than rely on someone else all the time to get that out. And obviously, the more I worked with him, the more I knew what he wanted and how to do that, and how to get this, what he had in his head out of him. So it became super easy in the end. Yeah, that was a really good relationship, getting their thoughts across. There wasn't really any clashes, maybe the odd thing about who should do this or who should do that, and the odd thing, but yeah, pretty seamless, really.
One of the things I think I've noticed, it's related to the difference between artists who possibly came up through tape and the people who came up with computers.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose this also links in with having the ability to have as many takes and as many tracks as you need. And it's like knowing when something isn't working, making decisions, and also just say, "Oh no, yeah, we've got the take." I think sometimes, especially if we go back to the original, the original discussion, sometimes obviously like everyone, you're always going for a safety take, or like, oh, I just need another one just in case. And it's like kind of moved away. I've moved away from that now. It's like, no, I know we've got it.
And it's too easy, isn't it, to do that? And it's too easy to over edit everything, to think you've got to,
make everything
really
perfect, and then there's no character in it.
Yeah, but it comes through with experience. And I think someone like working with someone like Luke Morley, who's a great producer, who just knows, and he grew up obviously in the days of tape and working with great producers making their Thunder records. He's brilliant at knowing when to leave something and when you need to redo something. And like, someone will go, oh, should we do it again just in case? And he'd be the first to say, why?
Yeah.
Why are we all going to waste time and waste energy? We've got it. It's brilliant. Yeah. And wow, there was this little bit. No one's going to care about that. By the time everything else is on, that's going to work, or this is going to work. He knows when something needs to be redone, and that's just through experience and from growing up in the industry with tape. And no, you didn't have those luxuries.
Yeah. You had to make a decision.
Yes, he's very much about making records based on performance and not fixing things, just getting the performance right and when to leave it. He's brilliant at it. Having grown up with tape myself, and I have that element as well, because you kind of just know when something isn't going to make any difference, when something does need to be fixed or when something doesn't need to be fixed. Bands, they'll do a take and you can be on, the second take could be the one. It's like you might go, well, let's do another one, but you might have an idea to try something just in case it's better if you do this or whatever. But after that, bands can, and some producers I've worked with, just, chasing their tails for this, just second guessing themselves and not making a decision. And just because of that, and because they can, going on and doing, you're on take 29, by which point everyone's tired, everyone's pissed off, everyone's had an argument, everyone's lost the will to live. We all know that take two's, well, I know that take two's the one, and they want take 29. And at that point, the band can't even get through a take anymore because there's so much information gone in their head. They don't know what they're supposed to, what is it that we're missing or what else. And then they don't even get to the end of a take. Then all of a sudden on take 29, they get to the end of the song without making a mistake.
It's just exciting.
And everyone's high-fiving and going, hey, aren't we brilliant? That's the take. We got it, guys. We got it. But really all that is the take where everyone got to the end without making a mistake. And it doesn't have the magic of take two, where there may be movement, maybe the odd little mistake, or maybe the thing that doesn't matter. But everyone's forgotten what magic take two had because they've been through this whole process. Everyone's tired and everyone's time's wasted. And then you just make the decision based on the fact that you got a take. And then you listen to it the next day and you're like, oh, right, yeah, okay. But it's wasted 4 hours, There's knowing when to move on. We haven't got months and months to make records anymore. So knowing when to move on, knowing when it's right.
Yeah.
And knowing what you can fix later, yeah, that's right, but don't worry about that. That won't, I can sort that. That's fine. No, but if anyone out there wants to learn a bit more about production and engineers and how we do it, and then we've got our production workshop coming up.
Yeah.
Which is at Leeders Vale on the 11th, 12th and 13th of April, I believe. Still a couple of places left. We've got a few people booked on that. So
Yeah.
there's a couple of places left. That's going to be great.
Yeah, and it's going to be a website. If you want to find out more information, is www.sessionrecord.com/Leeders Vale. And yeah, all the information, 3-day event, looking at, like, obviously, to talk about production, mixing, and a little bit of mastering. Next couple of episodes as well, what we'll be doing, like, I think next week we're going to be looking at mixing and how we approach mixing sessions, and then also mastering.
A little bit of mastering as well,
Yeah. So thanks very much, Nick.
You're welcome, John.
Yeah. And then if by magic, we might just happen to be wearing the same clothes in the next episode.
Well, just for continuity, next week when we do the next episode, I'm going to wear the same things and I'm going to come back to Leeders Vale, fly back from Spain, just so I'm sat here in the same place. Well, just for continuity. It looks good, John. I like this T-shirt.
Yeah. You know? Well, I like the angle as well. It's a strong angle. You know, it takes a long time to get the camera set up.
Yeah, I might have a slightly different angle next time, John. Okay. You know, I can't set it up exactly the same every time.
Well, some say they can't, but we know.
All right, nice one. Speak to you later.